All right, it's been a few days since Lilith has released an update for the armament system. So now it's time for part 2 of this armament strategy guide. I actually renamed the original one, so now that one is called Armaments Transmutation Basics. What it covers is just the math and some of the basics behind like why you lock what you lock. This one we're going to show a lot more real-world examples. So if you're kind of confused as what to do, hopefully this one will take a lot of the concepts in the first one, make it a lot more applicable to you, and you can really apply it to whatever situation you're at. All right. So first, let's talk about the concept of a floor and ceiling. Okay, so when something has a low floor, that means it's just going to be worse, right? Whereas if something has a high floor, at worst, it'll still be pretty good. And the opposite is true, right? Something has a high ceiling, it could be really good. If something has a low ceiling, that means its cap or its limit just won't be that as good as a high ceiling. So when you look at armaments, really the thing that determines whether it has a low floor or a high floor, low ceiling or high ceiling, first you have to look at the inscription. Okay, because if you think about the inscription as 4 slots, let's see here. Okay, if you think about the inscription as 4 slots, right? Or the armament as 4 slots. There's the inscription, and then there's slot 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3 is down here, right? Usually the first one you could get attack and then a bunch of other crap. Defense and then health. Sometimes you could get all damage. Also, instead of attack and defense, you could get march speed. Unless it's a really bad inscription, if it's just like a regular inscription, the inscription is actually going to match the best you could do for the stats. So, for example, for legendary inscriptions, right, you could get 3.5% attack, 3.5% defense for health. If you got that, you will be ecstatic. Right. Whereas if you get that for an inscription, oh, that's pretty good. That's average. Okay. So we always have to start with the inscription first, because that is the first thing you have to look at that could determine the floor or the ceiling of the armament. So if you look at this inscription up here, Pursuer, I pulled that because it's one of the worst inscriptions I found. You deal 2% extra damage, which is great, but only when the troop is under 20% units remaining. By then, they're already almost dead. Right, maybe it's like 1 or 2 hits are gone, and then they're already going to take a lot of side wounds. A lot of times, people refresh by the time they get to 50%. It's just a pretty useless inscription. So if you get something like that, I honestly probably wouldn't even lock it if your inscriptions are at a decent place. Because even if you locked it and started re-rolling and spent a lot of resources and time on it, the ceiling for that armament is limited. Right? Now, if you look at this rainbow stats at the bottom, let's just say you're trying to roll for archer or, God forbid, infantry or cav. If you got this inscription here, I forgot what brutal is. I think brutal is actually pretty good, but let's just pretend it's pursuer. Okay. I actually would not lock anything, because even if you locked archer's attack, once you get your armaments to a decent place, 1.6 attack is going to be really low, and you're going to be wasting a lot of transmutation stones just to even lock that attack. This is something where if you get it, okay, fine, you'll use it if it's better than what you have. But if not, you actually want to save for probably at least a average level inscription. So average would be when you get at least like 3.5 attack, defense, or health. Sometimes it's like 2.5% skill damage, something like that. If you're not sure, you can ask, because there's so many, but usually it's pretty obvious if the inscription, the regular inscription, is bad, average, or like pretty good. Okay, but in general, whenever you get a low floor, low ceiling armament, you don't want to do anything with it. You just want to skip it, even though it has an inscription, and technically you could lock it and then maybe like reroll later. Once you're a little bit further along armaments, you just want to recycle it. Now, a high floor or high ceiling armament almost always has to come with either a special inscription or a double inscription. We'll go over the probabilities in the next page, and you'll see how rare it is. But a special inscription is something like Hunter, right? That you can actually get when you win KVK. Intrepid is actually the wedge special inscription for the emblem. So if you look at this one compared to, say, Pursuer, right? You get a flat 10% boost to skill damage. That's really, really good. Okay, a double inscription is when you get 2 inscriptions on 1 armament. So this one, Calm and Ward, those are both just average, maybe even a little below average for Calm. But I'll read it out. So this one, when you deal any type of direct damage, 30% chance to gain 10% attack for 3 seconds, cooldown 5 seconds. Ward, whenever you use an active skill, the troop takes 5% less skill damage for 3 seconds. Okay, by itself, these are okay. They're not that good. But if you launch an active skill and you have a 30% chance to gain 10% attack, and you also take 5% less skill damage for 3 seconds, all of a sudden the combination of the two are pretty good. I would say these two probably are not, actually I'm pretty confident, it's not as good as Intrepid by itself, but you can imagine a world where there's like a combination of two other regular inscriptions that I would actually take over Intrepid, right? One could be, say, Robust, you get plus 3.5% health, and then let's just say another one's like Shielded, you get plus 3.5% defense. I would take 7% of defensive stats over a 10% skill damage boost, probably. I have to think about it, but I probably would, right? So you can actually get lucky and get a double inscription armament that's better than a special inscription. Also depends on the special inscriptions. Some are better than other. Intrepid's actually pretty good. Now, some other stuff that determines whether the ceiling is high is whether you have at least one high single stat. So in this case, the way I define a high single stat is if it's at least 3, right? Because when it's at least 3, the chances of you getting it is actually a lot lower. So if you get one, that's actually a really good foundation or base to start from. So if you look at this one on the bottom left here, I actually got a plus 3.2% archer attack and 3.5% archer defense, right? Even though the third stat is health, this is actually a very high ceiling, high floor armament already. Even if I lost KVK and I just got one of the ones that's not Hunter and I get like Robust and I put it on there, it's already more than usable. But from there, I can lock the 2 stats and roll the third one. Even if I got really unlucky and I had to roll a bunch of times and I finally got 1.5% health. So now I get a triple stat, 2 are over 3 and one's 1.5. That's still a way above average armament. And then, you know, you could keep rolling if you want. But also from there, let's just say it's a triple stat and 2 are over 3, then you could actually inscribe over it and put a Hunter over it, and it'll be really good. So that's, even if you get something like this is a definite lock because it has a lot of potential to turn into something else in the future. Okay, so let's actually go over some percentages. I'm not sure if you can see this here, okay, but to summarize everything down, if you just take a legendary formation choice chest, and then let's just say you pick Wedge, right? Your chances of pulling a special inscription from there, so 12.472%, and then from that 12.472%, you have a 0.62% chance of pulling a special inscription. You will get one in every 1,293. One special inscription in every 1,293 legendary formation choice chest you pull. Okay, if you're looking for the chances of getting a double inscription, that number is a lot more favorable. It's 1 in 113. Now for the flag and emblem, right, so the bottom left and the bottom right, it actually is a lot harder to get. It's about, you get about half the chance. So it goes up to 1 in 2,506, and then for the double inscription, 1 in 226. Okay, so the whole point of this page is to show you, if you get one, celebrate because you got lucky, but 2, you can't really count on or base your strategy on getting this first, right? You're like, I'm going to save everything until I get a special inscription. I mean, I've been pulling legendary choice chests for a year and 3 months or 2 months at this point. I have 0. Okay, I have like probably about 10 double inscriptions, but I literally have 0 special inscriptions. I haven't won a KVKs since got to Season of Conquest, and we can use this. So I don't have a Hunter. I don't have any. So if I was going to base my strategy on that, that would not be a winning strategy. That's why in the last video I suggested you actually want to just do a high floor armament set first, where it's at a decent place. And because once you're at a decent place, then you can start being a little bit more risky, being more aggressive, and try to upgrade from there. And I'll show some real examples to kind of tie all of it in together. But the whole point is, it's really hard to get a special inscription. A lot easier, probably 10 times more likely to get a double inscription. And what's cool is a lot of the times, well, not a lot of the time, sometimes if you get lucky with a double inscription, it can actually end up being better than the special inscription for that specific armament type. Okay, so what about rare inscriptions, right? That's a new thing that Lilith introduced. So here we have special, rare, and regular. I forgot exactly which armament type this was, but regardless, you can still make the comparison, right? So if you look at the Unstoppable, 5% skill damage boost. Rare, you get a 2% skill damage boost called Boiling Blood, and then Devious you get 2.5%. So the regular you actually get 0.5% more than the rare, but there's these percentage triggers, right? So for the special, 30% chance that you're going to increase your damage by 10%. That's pretty good. Combine that with a skill damage boost, 5%, that's really good. This one, you have 30% chance to reduce all incoming skill damage by 5%. So remember the ward that we showed earlier? This is essentially ward combined with 2% extra skill damage, right? So almost kind of like a double inscription, if you will. And actually, this is one of the better ones. There are some rare inscriptions that are not much better than regular at all. The rare, this Boiling Blood one is actually one of the better ones I found. And obviously the regular one is just a 2.5% more skill damage. So what I want to communicate with this is that the rare is better, but it's not something that you necessarily want to just save for and then build armaments around there. If you have something with a regular inscription and you have the stats in a pretty good place, and the rare comes out and it's a little bit better, is it worth it to just almost dump the one you currently have just to have a little bit better of an inscription? I would say no, but again, that's a case basis. I think rare is definitely a good thing for the game because it does kind of bridge the gap a little bit between special, but it's not something that's so good that you actually want to save for. Now, because it's so much harder to get double and special inscriptions for the emblem and the flag, if you do get a rare inscription for one of those two, it does become a little bit more valuable in my opinion. Okay, so let's go over some real examples. These are all armaments I have. Okay, so this one, Infamy, gives you 3.5% attack, which is average. It's okay. And this is actually a double stat emblem, right? 1.7 attack, 1.6 defense. Now, if you get this and it's better than what you have, celebrate and use it. But I wouldn't lock it. I mean, I wouldn't re-roll or spend any transmutation stone on this. First, because one, the Infamy is okay, right? Like, actually, this isn't that bad. Like, it's average. But even, like, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to lock both stats? Are you going to lock one stat and try to roll a third? 1.7, 1.6 is really low. Sometimes you just get a health that's 3.2, and I would actually just take that and 2 rainbow stats that's irrelevant, and I would take it over this, right? So this one, even though it looks cool, it's a double stat with an inscription. It's really not that usable, and I would not waste any transmutation stones on this. Now, if you look at this one, right, so this is actually currently what's on my Kuang Yu. So it's a triple stat, 2 low stats, 1 mid-high, almost a high stat, like health. Right, this is pretty good. I think most people, if they got this, will be happy. And also is Inscribe or Smite, which gives you 2% more normal damage of all types. Now, yesterday, I got a mail saying, you spent X amount, well, you recycled X amount of legendary, so here's a pity rare inscription. Focus Fire is also one of the better ones. So instead of 2% normal damage, it actually gives you a 4% boost to skill damage. Okay. And then I also got lucky with that where it gave me a double stat already too. So right now, if you compare the two by itself, right, and you can see this one I already rolled 8 times, so I only had 2 left. I would actually use this one on the left that I currently equipped over the one on the right. But the one on the right has a much higher ceiling, right? So this one, I have to go look just to make sure. But if this is where I'm the weakest, which I don't think it is, because the triple stat with a Smite emblem is actually pretty good. But if it was, right, this would be the next project I work on, where I would just lock the attack, because 1.5 defense is really low. At this point, I need something higher. And I would just roll until I get either defense or health above like 2.3, 2.4 for me. And then once defense or health comes out, it's 2.3 or 2.4, I will lock that too, and I will roll until I get the third one. And it's just kind of how you would go about it, right? And in the meantime, because I already have a pretty good floor with another armament, I can wait on this one. And this one, because it's an emblem, depending on where I'm at with my double stat and special inscriptions, if I ran out, this is potentially one where I would be willing to use a transmutation crystal to reset and then roll again until I get it to a good place. So the transmutation crystals, I don't think that's out officially yet, but in KVK for the achievements, you could get a certain amount. So it doesn't matter how much you spend, there's just a certain amount. My feel for that is it's probably going to be more than 1, less than 10. So probably around 5, maybe a little bit less. where you'll get like a few chances to essentially reset something that you used up already. So this is one I would actually probably be willing to use it. Now, if this was a say a scroll, right, which is like one of the most common ones where you get like you could get 100, you could get all this stuff, and I had a rare inscription on it, it would not be one that I would use a transmutation crystal on. It's just not worth it. Okay, here's another example. So if this is another emblem, right? So this is Smite is 2% more normal damage of all types, just like the one with the Guan Yu. And you can see the stats on this is very, very good. Okay, so this one, if I got a rare, let's just say I got a rare that's Focus Fire, I wouldn't even work on it, because even though 4% skill damage boost is probably better than 2% more normal damage of all types, this one is already such a high floor, high ceiling in a good place that unless I get something that's a special inscription or a double, and even then, if it's a double, is it worth it for me to spend that much time and resources on it, Transmutation Stone, or do I just stay with this, right? I will probably just stay with this. Or another way you could go about it is you never want to, like, if I could somehow come up with a armament for emblem and calves that's better than this, then this could actually go to my second march, and then all of a sudden I'll have two really strong emblems for my armaments. Okay, but this one, even though it's just a regular inscription, if I got a rare, I probably wouldn't reroll it. Even if I got a double, it depends. I might not reroll it, just because it's very hard to get stats like this high with an inscription. I mean, 2.2 is okay, but 1.4% all damage is actually like really, really high, right? At 2 is max. Now this next one, okay, I actually showed this already. So this is my Guan Yu. You can see I already used all 10, and I'll just tell you what I did, okay? Because, you know, I was aggressive with this because it's a scroll. So I locked the health, and I rolled for these two all 10 times. I actually got 1.6 attack 3 times out of this, was very unlucky. But what I was hoping for when I locked the one was I'll get one of the other stats, maybe attack that's above 1.6 or defense. I mean, if it's both, awesome. But at least one that's like mid, or somehow if I get lucky and I get, let's just say 1.6 attack and 1.5 defense, at least it's a triple stat with a double inscription. That's really good. And I was just very unlucky for this. I got attack a few times, but I never got defense. And this one's like mid, it's okay. Now, common ward is okay, and when you combine them together, it's pretty good, right? There's definitely better double inscription combinations out there. This is one where, honestly, I probably wouldn't use a transmutation crystal on, because if you look over here, right, I do already have a triple stat one with 3.4% health, and I actually probably would be more willing to just put a hunter on here and upgrade over this. Or you also have to look, like, let's just say my calves is weaker and this is already in a decent place. Maybe I'm willing to just put my hunter inscription on this cav one, which would make a very, I won't say very good, it's a okay, it's a very good cav scroll inscription, and then I would actually maybe use a transmutation crystal here and then re-roll this. So there's a couple ways you can go, but you can see for this one, right, I did not lock both. I actually only locked one, just because you don't want 1.6 attack once you get to a decent place. So there's no point locking it and using all that up. You actually want to get the minimum stat you're shooting for first, then you lock it, and then you roll for the next one. Okay, so this the graphic looks different because I pulled it directly from the last transmutation basics, now, if you will. So part 1, I'll link it a couple places in this video, but the strategy from then, nothing has changed. What should I do, right? One, it depends on your spend and roll, but most people should shoot to at least get a minimum of, on average, 2% each stat. So that's 6% per armament times 4 is going to be 24%. Once you're there, right, so you have a decent floor, then you work on a high upside project after, okay? And high upside project in this case, like I talked about, is you have either a special inscription or a double inscription, or you have like at least one, ideally like more than one, like high stat or mid-high stat, so you already have a solid place to build from. And then if you are actually doing the emblem and flag, just know that because the percentages are harder to get, you're going to have to lower your standard a little bit. Even like getting the stat, the percentage is lower. So maybe for like a scroll, I'm willing to do like 2.5 or 2.6. Whereas for an emblem or a flag, I'll be happy with 2.2. That, you just kind of come up with a number if you want. But just know that your emblem and your flag is just going to be worse. Okay, percentage, it's just going to be worse. And then what do? Right, you start with armament. You have 1, 2, or 3 stats that are already what you want, or maybe 0. And then if it's not 3, then you pick the minimum number you want, and then you roll until you get 1, 2 with that minimum. Then you lock it. Then you roll the other 2 until you get the second one to the minimum. You lock in the third one until you get all 3 to whatever you want. Now, if while you're doing that and you had a regular inscription and you got lucky, you get a special inscription and double inscription, then good, that's your floor. You don't work on that project anymore. You start on that new project and you do the same thing, but it's starting from a better place because you have a much better inscription. Okay, so if you watch all the way to the end, you haven't liked the video or subscribed yet, please do. I do have 2 channels, right? So this one is 44 Bus Driver. It's specifically on these like gaming concepts. I also started a new channel. It's called Kuang's Gaming Mentoring. You'll see me actually mentoring a few people in over like a recorded Discord call with going over their accounts. So you can kind of see now what mentoring, coaching like a real life account is like. When you watch that, I think you'll get a lot of stuff out of it. Also, if you are interested in just submitting some questions, the email for that is there. And when people submit questions, I could put together mailbags and then make other videos out of it. So if you haven't checked that out yet, please check that out. Again, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you guys next time.